For people with end-stage kidney failure, a transplant can be a treatment option that leads to a better quality and longer life. To see how some kidney transplant recipients got their second chance at life, join us on the Roadmap for Kidney Transplantation, Part 3. In Ohio, over 27,000 people are impacted by kidney disease. Of those, 18,000 require life-sustaining dialysis treatment due to kidney failure. Transplantation is the best treatment option for most people. However, only 2,100 Ohioans are on the list waiting for a kidney. The journey to getting a transplant can be overwhelming and intimidating for some, but for others, the benefits outweigh the risks.
I am a type 1 diabetic, so after about 10 years of having diabetes, I started to show early signs of damage, and the first manifestation of that was spilling protein in my urine. But about 6 years ago, the swelling from my kidneys not fully functioning had gotten so overbearing that I had to be hospitalized. They put me on a high dose of Lasix to get rid of all of that extra fluid. And it worked, but unfortunately, Lasix in high doses can ruin the little bit of kidney function that anyone has left.
Around 2015, 2016, I started having some symptoms and some swelling. I was retaining water and found out that my kidneys were unfortunately starting to shut down. So at that time, I needed to get evaluated for a kidney transplant.
I found out I was in kidney failure around 7 years ago. I was diagnosed with Alport syndrome after a kidney biopsy. I wanted to fix it myself. Thought I could take a pill, change a diet, because I was terrified of a transplant.
1999, I noticed that I was starting to have problems with my kidney. I noticed that I was having swelling in my feet, and eventually found through lab work that it was my kidneys that was the problem. I was shocked because I was very healthy in terms of my diet. I exercised quite a bit. When I found out that I needed to have a transplant, 2 of my brothers went into the process of seeing if they would be a good candidate to donate. But one was a better match than the other. 13 years after my first transplant that I found out that I would need a second transplant. I was doing a sit-up. I experienced a significant pain in my chest and found it very difficult to breathe. I had an aortic dissection, and my kidney was not receiving the blood that it needed to have, and my kidney failed. I knew that I would need to either learn to live on dialysis, or I would need to see if it was possible for me to receive a second kidney.
Donor and recipient matching is determined by several factors, including blood group compatibility, as well as certain antigen and antibody interactions.
I found my living donor. Her name is Daleen. My wife works out at the same place that Daleen works out. I was just getting put on the transplant list, and Daleen was there that night, and someone else had asked about me, how I was doing. Daleen had no idea. She listened to the whole story and took it all in, and my wife went to leave in her car, and Daleen was standing at my wife's window crying, and my wife's like, what's going on? Are you okay? And Daleen says, I just feel like I am supposed to do something for Larry. And my wife comes home and tells me, and I was obviously, knowing Daleen, I wasn't surprised, but also knew that the hospital said that it's a very slim chance of getting a living donor. Daleen was the first and only person to go through the process, and she was a perfect match.
After I started dialysis is when I started having conversations with my nephrologist about, you should consider going through the evaluation for transplant. I did not consider looking for a living donor at first. I had the misconception that asking someone to give up part of their body for me, because mine failed, if I felt lot of shame in asking and a lot of questioning whether it was a selfish thing to do. I really started to reconsider when I had been on the transplant waiting list for a cadaver donor for, I think, 3 years at that point, and I wasn't getting anywhere. My sister actually very much wanted to be my living donor. And so after listening to her story and talking with other people who had already gone through the process, I realized that this is something that the donor themselves wants to do. They go through so much testing on their own to make sure that their body is healthy enough to do it. They're fully aware of every outcome that's possible, and they want to do this. They want to help you. And it took me to really listen to that from my sister specifically, for me to be able to be okay with it and realize what I wasn't allowing myself to accept before. My sister, who had wanted to be a donor, found out that she wasn't going to be, even though she was a match, she wasn't going to be allowed to donate because she has a health condition that prevents her from doing it. So, still being my champion through this process, she helped me create a social media page looking for a match. But the actual woman who donated on my behalf was a former student of my father's. My father used to teach high school. So she, bless her heart, is just one of those good people who wants to help. And she went through the process and found out that she was a match. But we still ended up doing a kidney swap because she was a better match for someone else who needed a kidney whose donor was not a match at all. The woman whose kidney I did receive, she's just known ever since she was young when she learned about this, that was something that she wanted to do herself. So it's kind of a neat story that links all of us together for life.
Right after a kidney transplant, the patient will be in the hospital as long as they need to be. Once discharged, the patient will need to get lab and blood work completed at least twice a week. The frequency of the lab work will decrease as the patient recovers.
A transplant is not a cure, and you will need to take immunosuppressant drugs for the lifetime of your transplanted kidney.
Patients after surgery will be on a regimen of what's called immunosuppression. These are medicines to reduce that person's immune function so that the body will accept the new kidney. These medications are for the lifetime of the kidney transplant.
Once you've had a transplant, you can usually eat and drink more freely. Most people have more energy and can do more things. You have additional freedom to travel and work.
I was on the list for about 2.5 years. On May 2nd, I got the phone call that they had a kidney for me, and I was able to go down there and get my transplant. That was very exciting. The healing process was, kind of long because it was such a major organ, but after I healed up, I was able to go back to work. I'm not tied down to dialysis, and I'm able to get on with my life, feeling much better, feeling a lot healthier, got my strength back, got my appetite back.
After my 2 transplants, I'm very aware of my health. It's allowed me to give back in the way that I'm able to, and also to try and maintain my health as best as possible.
After surgery, I was a little sore, but I noticed a tremendous difference in my energy level right away. My labs would just prove this further. I hadn't been able to do a lot of distance walking or any kind of extended exercise since prior to dialysis. And after a few weeks, I was able to probably log about an average of 7,000 to 10,000 steps a day, which just blew my mind. It just gives me even more hope for for being able to live the life that I didn't think I was going to have again.
I truly don't think I slept more than 6-7 hours a night and was awake and ready to take on the day. Before transplant, I was getting at least 12 hours of sleep every day, drinking coffee and Mountain Dew to get through my job at UPS, coming home, eating, taking a shower, sleeping until my wife woke me up to go to bed. So truly, it's life-changing.
The process to receive a kidney can be long and tough. Your transplant team wants to make sure you have people in place that can help support and encourage you through the process.
One of the most important things after a kidney transplant is a social support system. This is a complicated medical regimen with very frequent follow-up and lab work, so we really ask that there's a strong support system after kidney transplant.
I am very fortunate to have such a great support system, and I don't know, honestly, if I could do it without all of them.
Immediately after the transplant, I went to stay with my brother who had donated, and his wife and his mother-in-law. They, set up a ward for both him and I. They were wonderful in making sure I got to my appointments, that I was taking my medications.
My support system was my wife. There's no way I could have gone through this by myself.
Well, my family is definitely my support system. My family, my wife and my daughter, and my friends as well. Everybody's been very supportive of me with follow-up doctor's appointments and blood work and healing up.
As you're led down the path to a kidney transplant, choose the best option that is right for you and help lead others by example.
If you're considering a transplant and hesitant, I would say it is life-changing in the best way possible. I didn't realize how sick I was until how much better I felt literally just a month after. Talk to someone if you can who's been through it. A good friend of mine put me in contact with a gentleman who had been through it, and I would say I had so many questions in my head, and he answered quite a few, and every time I got a question answered, I felt a little bit better.
Anybody that's considering getting a transplant, to do what you need to do to get evaluated to get a transplant. It's life-changing, for sure. You definitely feel better. I wouldn't worry about the surgery or anything. That is minimal compared to how you feel after you're all done and you're healing up and you can return to your life. You're not tethered to a dialysis machine. Getting the transplant definitely has given me a second chance on life. It's almost like a rebirth for me,
Please get evaluated. It will definitely change your life. Someone was considerate enough after their death to want to consider helping others, and I was blessed that someone wanted to help me. And I am so forever grateful for this kidney.
Having my own hesitations about transplant in the beginning of this process, I think better equips me to offer this advice to anyone else who's in that situation now. Education is the best thing that can help you make the decision that's appropriate for you. It will improve your life even more.
If you or a loved one has questions about any of the information we shared, talk to your nephrologist or contact the Kidney Foundation of Ohio